My lawyer says I should write this down. Every detail, every lie, every manipulation. Says it'll help with the divorce proceedings, though we both know Robert's too smart to leave evidence. But I'll write it anyway, if only to understand how I went from having everything to losing it all in a single night. 6 months ago, I had the perfect setup. Robert, my husband of 10 years, worked 80-hour weeks at his tech company in San Jose, while I enjoyed the freedom his $300,000 salary provided. Beautiful house in Willow Glen, Tesla in the garage, closets full of designer clothes, and a country club membership I used mainly to meet Jax, my personal trainer. Very personal, as it turned out. I met Jax at the club's gym 14 months ago. Robert had suggested I find a trainer after I complained about gaining weight. His attempt to help that I'd twisted into criticism, ammunition for my growing resentment. Jax was everything Robert wasn't. 28 years old, 6'3" of sculpted muscle, covered in tattoos that told stories of a life lived dangerously, and he had a wolf smile that made you want to be his prey. Where Robert was soft-spoken and analytical, Jax was bold and impulsive. Where Robert brought me flowers, Jax brought me orgasms in the back seat of his Camaro. The contrast thrilled me. After a decade of predictable comfort, Jax was chaos in compression shorts. The affair with Jax started a year ago. Nothing dramatic, just a gradual slide from flirting during sessions to meeting at hotels twice a week. It began with lingering touches during stretches, progressed to coffee after workouts, then exploded into desperate encounters in places that still make me flush with remembered heat. The first time was in his car after a late session, parked behind the abandoned warehouse on Meridian. I told myself it was just once, just a moment of weakness, but weakness became routine, and routine became addiction. Robert never suspected. Why would he? I'd crafted the perfect image of the devoted wife. Dinner ready when he came home late, ordered from his favorite restaurants and played it on our wedding china. Supportive smiles at company events where I played the Silicon Valley spouse to perfection. Just enough intimacy to keep him satisfied, but not enough to interfere with my afternoons with Jax. I became an expert at scheduling, at alibis, at showering away another man's cologne before my husband came home. "You're playing with fire, Sophia," my sister Elena warned after spotting Jax and me at lunch in Santana Row. We'd been careless, holding hands over appetizers at a restaurant too close to Robert's office. "Robert's too busy making money to notice," I'd replied, confident in my deception. "Besides, what he doesn't know won't hurt him." Elena had stared at me like I was a stranger. "Who are you?" "The Sophie I grew up with wouldn't do this." "The Sophie you grew up with was broke," I'd snapped back. "Now I have everything I want." "Don't ruin it with your middle-class morality." That was the last real conversation Elena and I had. I see now how I'd isolated myself, one burned bridge at a time. Famous last words. The system was flawless. Jax's name in my phone is Diana PT. Cash payments for hotels withdrawn in small amounts from different ATMs. Gym bag always packed with a change of clothes and travel-sized shower essentials. 10 years of marriage had taught me Robert's patterns, his blind spots, his trusting nature. He'd check our joint accounts but never questioned my personal spending money. He'd ask about my day, but accept whatever story I fed him. He trusted me completely, which made everything easier. Too easy, maybe. Success made me careless. Or maybe I wanted to get caught. My therapist suggested that later, during one of the sessions, Robert's divorce lawyer recommended to establish my fitness as a parent. Funny thing, we never had kids, but his lawyer was thorough enough to prevent future claims. It started small, coming home with my hair styled differently than when I'd left. The scent of men's cologne clinging to my gym clothes. Bruises on my thighs I blamed on new workout routines. Smiling at texts Robert couldn't see, then quickly darkening my screen when he entered the room. "You're glowing lately," Robert had noticed 3 months into the affair. "The gym's really working for you." "Thanks, babe," I'd replied, kissing his cheek while thinking of Jax's mouth on mine an hour earlier. Just trying to be the best version of myself. The best version. What a joke! I was becoming the worst version, but mirrors lie when you're high on deception. Each slip felt insignificant, but looking back, they were breadcrumbs leading to my destruction. The receipt from Victoria's Secret. I left on the counter. Lingerie Robert never saw. The second phone I kept hidden in my car, paid for with cash, just for Jax. The way I'd flinch when Robert touched me, my body trained to respond to rougher hands. "Working late again?" I'd asked Robert one Thursday in March, already mentally planning my evening with Jax. We'd found a new hotel in Milpitas, far enough from our usual haunts to feel safe. Big presentation tomorrow for the Singapore clients. Might pull an all-nighter at the office. He looked exhausted already, purple shadows under his eyes from too many 16-hour days. The company was going public, and as lead engineer, Robert carried the weight of the IPO on his shoulders. I should have cared. Instead, I saw opportunity. "Poor baby," I cooed, rubbing his shoulders briefly. "I'll keep dinner warm for you. Don't wait up." This might go until 3 or 4. He kissed my forehead, distracted. "Love you?" "Love you too." The words tasted like ash. When had I stopped meaning them? When had Robert become an obstacle to navigate rather than the man I'd chosen to build a life with? Perfect. I texted Jax immediately from my burner phone. "Free tonight. Your place?" "Can't wait," he replied. "Wear the red dress." The red dress? Robert had bought it for our anniversary last year. A surprise trip to Napa, 5-star restaurants, couples massage at Auberge du Soleil. I'd complained the entire weekend about the wine tour being boring, the spa not being up to my standards, the dress being too tight. Robert had apologized, promised to plan better next time. There was no next time. I'd worn the dress exactly once for him, then saved it for Jax. The thought of wearing Robert's gift for another man gave me a sick thrill. Power, control, having my cake and eating it too. I should have noticed Robert's behavior changing. The way he'd started working from home more often, claiming he could focus better. How his late nights became verifiable through the office security system he'd casually mentioned. The new passwords on his devices. For work security, he'd explained. The way he'd begun asking specific questions about my day instead of his usual distracted, "How was your day, honey?" But arrogance is blindness, and I was drunk on my own cleverness. I had a sexy young lover who worshipped my body. I had a rich husband who funded my lifestyle. I had the best of both worlds, and I deserved it all. That's what I told myself in the mirror each morning as I covered love bites with concealer. That Thursday played out like a perfectly choreographed dance. Robert left for work at 7 a.m. with his usual goodbye kiss, dry lips pressed against my cheek while I mentally calculated how many hours until Jax. I spent the day preparing like a bride for her wedding. Salon appointment for hair and nails, charged to Robert's Amex, of course. Shopping at Valley Fair for new lingerie, a ritual that had become as routine as grocery shopping. The anticipation built with each preparation, each lie I'd tell later, each moment bringing me closer to my real life, the one that happened in hotel rooms in Jax's apartment. When evening came, I put on the red dress, spritzed myself with perfume Robert had given me for Christmas, and headed out. I told our security system I was going to book club, a lie so frequently used that I'd actually joined a book club to provide cover, though I'd never read a single selection. "Heading out, Mrs. Sullivan?" our neighbor Harold called from his driveway. Sweet old Harold, always washing his classic Mustang, always watching the neighborhood. "Book club," I said with my practiced smile. "Something literary, I think." He laughed. "Enjoy your evening." If only Harold knew that my book club was a studio apartment in East San Jose, where a 28-year-old trainer would bend me over his second-hand couch. But Harold, like Robert, only saw what I showed them, the devoted wife maintaining her social connections. Jax lived in a converted loft that screamed bachelor pad. Exposed brick, minimal furniture, a bed that dominated the space like an altar to hedonism. The contrast to my pristine Willow Glen home excited me. This was where I became someone else, someone wild and free and nothing like Robert's wife. "You look incredible," Jack said when he opened the door. 28 years old, all muscle and ego, exactly what I wanted after years of Robert's soft stomach and softer personality. Jack's had the kind of confidence that came from knowing exactly how good he looked, from the trail of broken hearts he left at the gym, from never having to work for female attention until he met me, a challenge, a conquest, a married woman who made him work for it. "Pour me wine," I ordered, enjoying how he jumped to comply. That was the difference. Robert treated me like a partner. Jax treated me like a goddess. I thought that made me the one in control. "The good stuff tonight," he said, producing a bottle of Camus that I recognized from our wine cellar. "Thought we should celebrate." "Celebrate what?" 3 months since our first time. He grinned, that boyish smile that probably melted undergraduate hearts. "Best 3 months of my life." I laughed, but something cold moved through me. 3 months? Had it only been 3 months since that first desperate coupling in his Camaro? It felt like longer. It felt like I'd been living this double life forever. We were 2 glasses in when Jax brought up something that should have been my first real warning. "That husband of yours must be really oblivious," he said, running his hand up my thigh. "A woman like you, coming here dressed like that. Any real man would know." "Robert's too trusting for his own good," I laughed, the wine making me cruel. "He probably thinks I'm discussing Jane Austen right now." "His loss." Jax pulled me closer, his cologne overwhelming in the small space. "Though sometimes I wonder what he'd do if he found out." Tech guys can be crazy when they snap. Remember that guy in Palo Alto who... "Robert? Please. He'd probably apologize for not being enough man for me. Maybe offer to pay for therapy to discuss why I felt the need to stray." I took another sip, enjoying my own wit. "He's not the type to make scenes." We both laughed. God, I actually laughed at the idea of my husband's pain. That's the kind of person I'd become. The kind who took pleasure in betrayal, who felt superior for successfully deceiving someone who loved me. "You really got him wrapped around your finger, huh?" Jax mused. "Must be nice. The money, the house, the freedom to do whatever you want." "I earned it," I said defensively. 10 years of dinner parties with boring engineers. 10 years of pretending to care about server architecture and coding languages. You have no idea how mind-numbing it is." "Poor baby," Jax mocked gently. "Suffering in your mansion." "It's not a mansion," I corrected. "Just a nice house. Robert's too practical for anything flashy." "Still, must be worth what, 2 mil? 3? 3.5, I admitted. But it's primarily in his name. Some tax thing his financial advisor recommended." Jax whistled low. "That's a lot of house. You ever worry about, losing it all?" "California's a community property state," I recited. "Half of everything is mine no matter what. Besides, Robert would never divorce me. He needs me." "For what?" The question caught me off guard. What did Robert need me for? I used to know. Companionship, love, building a future together. Now? I managed his social calendar, hosted his business dinners, played the role of successful tech wife. But need. Real need. "He just does," I said finally, not liking the doubt creeping in. The evening progressed as usual. Dinner we barely touched. Sushi from the same place Robert and I had our first date. Another small cruelty I enjoyed. Conversation that was really just foreplay. Jax telling stories about difficult clients while I ran my foot up his leg under the table. The inevitable retreat to his bedroom with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights. I'd gotten so comfortable in the routine that I didn't think twice about silencing my phone and tossing it on his nightstand. Didn't wonder why Robert hadn't texted to check in like he sometimes did during all-nighters. Didn't notice the small red light blinking on my screen. The security alert I'd disabled months ago somehow reactivated. Didn't question the false sense of security that comes from getting away with something too many times. It was nearly midnight when we heard the knock. Not the buzzer from downstairs, but a knock directly on Jax's apartment door. We both froze. "You expecting someone?" I whispered, pulling the sheet up to cover myself. "No, maybe it's a neighbor," but his voice cracked slightly. Tough guy Jax, scared of a knock at the door. Another knock, harder this time. Deliberate, patient. "I'll check," Jax said, pulling on sweatpants. "Stay here." But I followed, wrapping myself in his robe, a silly silk thing with dragons on it that he'd bought to impress women. My legs were shaking, though I told myself it was from our activities, not fear. Jax looked through the peephole and went pale. "Who is it?" I asked. He turned to me, eyes wide. "It's your husband." The words didn't compute. Robert was at his office. Robert was pulling an all-nighter. Robert was in a conference room with Singapore clients 12 time zones away. Robert was anywhere but standing outside my lover's apartment at midnight. "That's impossible," I said, pushing Jax aside to look for myself. But there he was, my husband of 10 years, standing in the hallway with an expression I'd never seen before. Not angry, not sad, just empty. Like someone had hollowed him out and left only the shell. He was still in his work clothes, but they were rumpled, his tie askew. In his hand was a manila folder. "Open the door, Sophia," he said calmly. "I know you're in there." My hands shook as I fumbled with the locks. Some part of me still thought I could talk my way out of this. Claim a misunderstanding. Create some elaborate lie he'd believe because he'd always believed me before. The door opened, and Robert looked me up and down. The robe, the smeared lipstick, the guilt written across my face. His eyes lingered on my neck, where Jax had left marks, on my bare feet, on the wedding ring I still wore like a mockery. "The red dress is on the bedroom floor," he said conversationally. "The one I bought you for our anniversary. You told me it didn't fit right. Guess it fits just fine for him." "Robert, I can explain." "No need. I've been documenting everything for the last 3 months. He held up his phone, showing an app I didn't recognize. "Amazing what technology can do these days. Did you know your phone syncs with our home security system? Every text, every call, every location, even the ones from your second phone? Yes, I know about that too. Hiding it in your tampon box? A bit cliché, Sophia. Did you think I was that squeamish?" 3 months. He'd known for 3 months and never said anything, never confronted me. Just watched. Gathered evidence. Waited. "Why didn't you say something?" "Because I needed to be sure. Needed to know exactly who I married, needed documentation for what comes next." He looked past me to Jax, who was trying to disappear into the wall. "And you." Jax Morrison, personal trainer at Elite Fitness, 28, divorced, 2 kids you see every other weekend, currently sleeping with at least 4 other married women besides my wife. Jax's face went from pale to green. "How do you—" Your ex-wife, Brittany, was very helpful once I explained the situation. "Apparently you pulled this same routine during your marriage. She even gave me screenshots of your dating profiles, the ones where you specifically target married women. Discreet fun for unsatisfied wives, I believe was the tagline." I stared at Jax. 4 other women? Dating profiles targeting married women? The wine turned to acid in my stomach. I stood there in a stranger's robe, watching my carefully constructed world crumble. But Robert wasn't done. He opened the manila folder, pulled out a stack of papers. "Divorce papers," he said, handing them to me. "Already filed. The house is mine. Premarital asset, remember? Your Tesla's been repossessed. It was in my name. Your credit cards are canceled. The bank accounts are frozen pending division of assets, which won't be much after my lawyer documents your dissipation of marital funds. You can't just—" "I can, and I did." But wait, there's more. He pulled out another document. "This is fun." A forensic accounting of every dollar you've spent on your affair. Hotels, dinners, lingerie, gifts. $73,000, Sophia. You spent $73,000 of our money on him. My knees went weak. 73,000? That couldn't be right. But even as I denied it, I remembered the watches, the weekend trips, the constant shopping to impress a man who apparently had 4 other women doing the same thing. My attorney says it's called dissipation of marital assets. Means you don't get to count that money in the division. So let's see. Half of what's left after debts and your spending spree comes to about 40,000. Hope you've been saving. This is ridiculous. I'll fight this. I'll get my own lawyer. With what money? I've canceled your cards, remember? Oh, and your sister Elena? She's been helping me document everything. Turns out she's been taking screenshots of your Instagram stories. The ones you thought disappeared after 24 hours? She's got them all. Every tagged location that didn't match your alibis. Every photo of expensive jewelry I never bought you. He smiled then, and it was terrible. Your whole family knows, by the way. Elena made sure of that. Something about being tired of watching you disrespect a good man. I'll fight this, I said, finding my voice. I'll take half of everything. California's a community property state. True. But adultery affects asset division when there's evidence of financial misconduct, like using marital funds for hotel rooms, or buying lingerie with my credit cards for your boyfriend. My forensic accountant's been very thorough. He turned to leave, then paused. Oh, one more thing. Remember that presentation I had tomorrow, the one that kept me at the office? There is no presentation. No Singapore clients either. I've been busy meeting with divorce attorneys and private investigators. And as it turns out, getting to know Melanie from accounting. You know, the one you always said was too pretty to be smart? Turns out she's both. Tonight was just the culmination of 3 months of planning. He looked at Jax one last time. Your gym already knows about your side business with married clients. HR received an interesting package of screenshots and testimonials from other husbands. I'm sure you'll land on your feet. Guys like you always do. Just not at Elite Fitness. You planned this, I whispered, the full scope of his revenge becoming clear. You've been planning this for months. 3 months, he confirmed. Ever since I saw that text you sent him about the hotel on Pine Street. I've spent every moment since making sure that when I left you, you'd have nothing. Just like you left me with nothing but a broken heart and a decade of lies. I have rights. You have nothing. Check your email. Your lawyer, the one you haven't hired yet, will find everything they need to know about hidden assets you didn't declare, gifts to Jax you claimed were personal expenses, and a very interesting conversation with your personal shopper about hiding purchases from your husband. Fraud, Sophia. That's what they call it. Then back to me. There's a bag in the hallway with some of your clothes and essentials. The Comfort Inn on 1st Street has a room reserved in your name. Paid for 1 week. After that, you're on your own. Don't try coming to the house. The locks have been changed, and I've hired security. Your car, your actual car, the Honda you had before we married, is in the parking lot downstairs. I was generous enough to pay off the loan. Robert, please. We can talk about this. We could have talked 3 months ago when I first found out. We could have talked a year ago when you started pulling away. We could have talked any time during our 10 years of marriage. But you chose to talk to him instead. He glanced around the apartment, taking in the generic furniture, the empty wine bottles, the general seediness of my secret life. Happy anniversary, by the way. 10 years ago today, you promised to love, honor, and cherish me. At least now I know what those words are worth to you. He left then, closing the door with a quiet click that sounded like the end of everything. Jax immediately started panicking about his job, his reputation, his apartment he could barely afford. His carefully maintained cool completely shattered. "This is your fault," he shouted. "You said he was clueless. You said there was no risk." "Shut up," I snapped, trying to think through the wine fog. "Just shut up and let me think." "Think? Think about what? I'm going to lose my job, my clients, Everything. He paced the apartment like a caged animal. 4 other women. How did he even know that? Because you're sloppy, I spat back. Dating profiles? Really? Like you're so careful? He tracked your every move. We turned on each other then, 2 guilty parties looking for someone else to blame. He called me a spoiled bitch who'd ruined his life. I called him a cheap gigolo who preyed on lonely women. Both accusations true. Neither willing to admit it. I grabbed my things, dressed hastily in the bathroom while Jax continued his meltdown. The red dress seemed tighter now, cheaper, like the costume it had always been. My hands shook as I tried to fix my makeup, but there was no fixing this. No concealer for the destruction I'd caused. The Uber ride to the Comfort Inn was the longest 20 minutes of my life. The driver kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror. A woman in an evening dress with smeared makeup fleeing an apartment complex at 1 a.m. I probably looked exactly like what I was. The Comfort Inn room was a shock. Beige walls, scratchy sheets, the smell of industrial cleaning products and stale cigarette smoke clinging to the curtains. I'd become so accustomed to luxury that ordinary felt like punishment. My phone had exploded with messages during the ride. Elena telling me exactly what she thought of me. My mother devastated by what Robert had told her. Friends choosing sides with brutal efficiency. The worst was from my father. Your mother is heartbroken. You've humiliated our entire family. Don't contact us until you've fixed this mess you've created. Fixed it? How do you fix complete destruction? I spent that first night going through the documents Robert had left. The divorce filing was dated 3 months ago. He'd been planning this from the moment he discovered the affair. The financial statements showed every penny I'd spent, categorized and annotated. Hotel for adultery, lingerie for affair partner, gifts purchased with marital funds for paramour, clinical language that made my choices sound even worse. The forensic accountant's report was devastating. I'd spent more than my entire year's allowance on Jax. Money that should have gone to our future had been wasted on hotel rooms and presents for a man who was simultaneously romancing 4 other married women. The investigator's report on Jax was even worse. A pattern of targeting wealthy married women, getting them to spend money on him, then moving on when the well ran dry or the husband found out. I'd been played. The player got played, and I'd paid $73,000 for the privilege. The divorce was final last month. I got 10% of our assets after the forensic accounting, the dissipation claim, and legal fees. 10% of what was left after Robert's meticulous documentation of my spending. The judge had been particularly unsympathetic when presented with receipts for lingerie charged to Robert's credit card while he was working 18-hour days to prepare for the IPO. Mrs. Sullivan, the judge had said, barely concealing her disgust, you systematically defrauded your husband while conducting an extramarital affair. You're fortunate he's not pursuing criminal charges. Jax lost his job and disappeared. Last I heard, he'd moved to Vegas to work at a casino gym. My friends chose Robert, especially after Elena shared screenshots of texts where I'd called them boring suburban prisoners and mocked their pathetic wine mom lives. I work retail now at a department store in Fresno, selling designer goods I can no longer afford. $40,000 sounds like a lot until you're paying rent, utilities, and trying to maintain any semblance of the life you used to have. My coworkers are 20-somethings who call me ma'am and complain about their boyfriends while I fold $500 sweaters I once bought without thinking. Robert, meanwhile, is engaged to Melanie. I saw the announcement on LinkedIn before he blocked me everywhere else. The ring he bought her is twice the size of mine ever was. They're planning a destination wedding in Tuscany. The trip he'd wanted to take me on for our anniversary before I decided Jax was more important. You should have been smarter, Elena told me during our last conversation. Robert loved you more than anything. All you had to do was love him back. I did love him, I protested, even though we both knew it was a lie. No. You loved what he provided. You loved the lifestyle, the security, the freedom to do nothing while he killed himself at work. You loved being married to him. But him? The actual person? You never even saw him. She was right. I'd confused comfort with love, provision with partnership. I'd taken a good man's trust and weaponized it against him, never imagining he had weapons of his own. Robert won. Completely, utterly, devastatingly won. Not through anger or violence or dramatic confrontation, but through patience and planning and the kind of cold calculation I'd thought him incapable of. He'd seen me for exactly who I was, and responded accordingly. They say the best revenge is living well. Robert took it a step further. He ensured I'd live poorly while he lived well. Every success in his life, the promotion to CTO after the IPO made him a multimillionaire, the engagement to a woman who actually loves him, the respect of everyone who knows the story, is a reminder of what I threw away. I drive past our old house sometimes when I visit the Bay Area. Can't afford to live there anymore. But I torture myself with glimpses of what I lost. The garden I'd neglected is thriving under Melanie's care. The lights are warm in windows I used to look through without seeing. They've repainted the front door. The burgundy I'd chosen replaced with a cheerful yellow that somehow looks more like home than it ever did with me. Last month, Harold the neighbor saw me parked across the street. He walked over, still kind despite knowing everything. "Sophia," he said gently, "you need to move on. This isn't healthy." "I know," I admitted. I can't believe I threw it all away." "Robert's a good man," Harold said. "He deserved better." "But so do you. You deserve to forgive yourself and build something new. Do I? Do I really deserve forgiveness after what I did?" Harold was quiet for a moment. "I've been married 43 years. You know what the secret is? It's not love, though that helps. It's not passion, though that's nice. It's choosing each other every single day. You stopped choosing Robert long before you chose someone else. The affair was just the symptom." He patted my car door and walked away, leaving me with a truth that hurt worse than all of Robert's revenge. "No regrets," I used to tell Jax when he worried about getting caught. "Life's too short for regrets." Turns out, life's exactly long enough for regrets. Long enough to replay every moment you could have chosen differently. Long enough to understand that the person you betrayed wasn't the fool. You were. Long enough to realize that the best revenge isn't served cold. It's served with divorce papers on your anniversary while you stand in your lover's apartment wearing his cheap robe and your husband's disappointment. Robert, if you ever read this, though I know you won't, you've moved on too completely for that, know that you won. Not just the divorce, not just the assets, but the whole game I didn't even know we were playing. You gave me exactly what I earned. A life as empty as the vows I broke. And somewhere in San Jose, in a house with a yellow door and a thriving garden, you're giving Melanie exactly what she deserves. The love I was too selfish to value. The life I was too stupid to cherish. The man I was too blind to see. That's your real revenge. Not my poverty or my isolation or my regret, but your happiness. Your ability to trust again, love again, build again. While I sit here in Fresno, writing checks my heart can't cash, paying bills my pride can't cover, you're writing a better story with someone who knows your worth. I work my retail job. I go to therapy. I try to become someone who wouldn't make the same choices. But mostly I live with the consequences of valuing excitement over stability, passion over partnership, secrets over honesty. The marriage I destroyed was never perfect. Robert worked too much. We'd grown comfortable, maybe complacent. But it was real, and it was mine. And I torched it for $73,000 worth of hotel rooms and a man who targeted married women for sport. Game over, you win. And we both know I'll never play again. Not because I can't find another man to marry. Desperate women always can. But because I finally understand what I lost. Not just money or status or security. I lost the chance to grow old with someone who knew my coffee order, who rubbed my feet during movie nights, who worked 18-hour days to build our future while I destroyed it one lunch-hour tryst at a time. That's the real tragedy. Not that Robert won, but that he had to play at all. That instead of working on our marriage, I worked on my deception. That instead of choosing him, I chose destruction and called it living. The last time I saw Robert was at a tech conference in San Francisco. He was keynoting about innovation and disruption. I sat in the back row, just another face in the crowd, watching the man I'd underestimated command the stage. He wore the watch I'd given him for our 5th anniversary, the one thing of mine he'd kept. During Q&A, someone asked about work-life balance, how he managed success without sacrificing relationships. "I learned the hard way," he said. "I used to think providing was enough. That if I worked hard and gave my partner everything material, that equaled love. But love is presence. It's choosing to be there even when work is calling. It's making sure your partner knows they're your priority, not just your responsibility." He never mentioned me, never alluded to our marriage. But I knew he was talking about us. About the mistakes we'd both made, though mine were far worse. He'd neglected me for work. I'd betrayed him for attention. Neither was right, but only one was unforgivable. After his talk, I watched him meet Melanie in the lobby. She'd been in the front row, beaming with pride. He kissed her like she was the only person in the room, held her hand like it was precious, looked at her like she was his whole world. Everything I'd had, everything I'd thrown away. They walked out together, talking and laughing, planning their wedding and their future and their life. Behind them, I stood alone in a conference center I couldn't afford to attend. I'd snuck in with someone else's badge, wearing a dress from the clearance rack, watching my replacement live my life. Except it wasn't my life anymore. It never really was. It was a life Robert offered to share with me, and I'd treated it like a temporary arrangement until something better came along. Turns out Robert was the something better. I just couldn't see it until he was gone. That's my story. Not a tragedy, because tragedies happen to people. This was a choice, a series of choices, each one taking me further from the life I had and closer to the life I earned. Robert gave me 10 years of love. I gave him 3 months of evidence. He gave me everything. I gave him to Melanie. And that, more than all the lawyers and forensic accountants and frozen bank accounts, is why he won. Because he knew something I'm only learning now. The opposite of love isn't hate. It's what I did. It's treating someone's trust like weakness, their faith like foolishness, their love like a resource to exploit rather than a gift to cherish. Game over. He wins. And somewhere in San Jose, with his new fiancée and his new life, and his hard-earned wisdom about love requiring presence, Robert Sullivan isn't thinking about me at all. That's the ultimate revenge. Not my suffering, but his indifference. Not my loss, but his gain. Not the game he won, but the new game he's playing with someone who understands the rules. Choose each other, every day, no matter what. Too bad I had to lose everything to learn that. Too bad Robert had to teach me through destruction what he'd tried to show me through devotion. Too bad the best husband I'll ever have is marrying someone else while I fold sweaters in Fresno and pretend regret is the same as redemption. It's not. Regret is just the echo of choices you can't unmake. Redemption is what Robert found with Melanie, what I'll spend the rest of my life searching for and never quite reaching. Because some games you only get to play once, and when you lose as spectacularly as I did, nobody offers a rematch.